What happens when America's sweetheart, Kelly Clarkson, faces the most uncomfortable interview of her career? What began as a simple morning show appearance unraveled into live television chaos, leaving viewers stunned, Craig Melvin speechless, and NBC executives scrambling behind the scenes. This is the story of how a single personal question ignited a confrontation so tense it ended with Kelly Clarkson walking off the Today Show set. If you want to see how this explosive moment unfolded from beginning to end, make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments what you think really pushed Kelly over the edge. The calm before the storm was a typical morning at NBC Studios in New York City. Kelly Clarkson, fresh off another successful season of her daytime talk show, was scheduled for what should have been a routine promotional interview with Craig Melvin. The plan was simple: chat about her brand new album, upcoming tour dates, and her continued rise as one of television's most beloved hosts. Backstage, the energy was upbeat. Crew members joked casually as they prepared. Kelly arrived in high spirits, greeting staff warmly and chatting with makeup artists and production assistants. Her down-to-earth charm was on full display. Craig, equally polished and professional, had his notes ready. He looked eager to sit across from one of America's favorite entertainers. As they settled into their chairs beneath the bright Today Show lights, everything seemed set for a smooth, feel-good segment. The interview begins. The first few minutes went perfectly. Craig welcomed Kelly with genuine enthusiasm, highlighting her success both as a singer and a talk show host. "Kelly, it's always such a pleasure having you here," he said with a wide smile. "You've been killing it with your show, and now you've got this incredible new album. Tell us about the inspiration behind these songs." Kelly's face lit up. She spoke passionately about her creative process, the songwriters she'd collaborated with, and how her personal experiences shaped her music. She gestured animatedly, her excitement contagious. "This album," she explained, "captures exactly where I am right now. I wanted to be honest about the joys and the challenges. Music has always been my way of processing life." Craig nodded along, the rhythm of the interview flowing effortlessly. Kelly was relaxed, funny, and engaging. The perfect guest. The turn then Craig leaned forward. His tone softened, but his words carried weight. "Now I have to ask," he began. "Your fans are always curious about your personal life. You've been pretty open about your divorce and how that's affected you. How are you handling things now? And are you seeing anyone special?" The question seemed harmless enough. But for Kelly, something shifted. Her smile lingered, though her pause was longer than usual. "You know, Craig, I'm in a really good place," she said warmly but with a subtle edge. "I'm focused on my kids, my career, and just taking it one day at a time. That's what feels healthiest for me right now." It was the kind of diplomatic answer most hosts would accept and move on. But Craig didn't, pushing too far. "That's wonderful," he said smoothly. "But there have been rumors about you and someone new. Any truth to that?" Kelly's expression tightened. Barely perceptible, but the cameras caught it. "I prefer to keep my private life private, Craig," she replied firmly. "My fans understand and respect that boundary." It was a polite but unmistakable signal. "Enough." Still, Craig pressed again. "I understand wanting privacy," he said. "But your fans adore you. They just want to see you happy. Surely you can give us a little hint. What makes Kelly Clarkson happy these days? Outside of work?" This time, the tension was visible. Kelly's jaw clenched slightly, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The warning signs of frustration were there for anyone watching closely. The smile faded. She drew in a slow breath. Then came her reply, low, deliberate, and with a new-to-you-sharpness in her voice. "What makes me happy?" Kelly spoke evenly, her tone controlled but edged with unmistakable coolness. "What makes me happy?" she said, is being able to come on shows like this and talk about my music and my career without having every part of my personal life dissected for entertainment value. The air in the studio shifted instantly. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the interview had strayed into dangerous territory. But Craig pressed forward, either oblivious to the rising tension or determined to carve out a headline moment. "Kelly, I think you might be reading too much into this," he said with a laugh that rang hollow. "We're just having a friendly conversation. Your fans tune in because they care about you as a person, not just as a performer." For the first time, a flicker of anger flashed in Kelly's eyes. She didn't raise her voice, but the steel in her words was unmistakable. "And I appreciate that support, Craig. I really do. But caring about someone doesn't mean you're entitled to every detail of their private life." The atmosphere grew heavier. What should have been a light segment was unraveling into a very public clash of boundaries. Craig leaned in, his own tone tightening. "I'm not asking for every detail," he countered. "I'm asking basic questions. Questions any celebrity would expect in an interview. This is what you signed up for when you became a public figure." Kelly's face flushed, her composure tested. The warmth her fans knew from her talk show was gone, replaced by a sharpness few had ever witnessed. "What I signed up for," she shot back, "was to promote my album and talk about my work. I didn't sign up to justify my personal choices or feed gossip for people who think my private life is their entertainment." The once cheerful studio had turned icy. Even Craig seemed rattled by her bluntness, though he pushed on with a fragile smile. "Kelly, I think you're being a little defensive here. I'm not trying to invade your privacy. I'm doing my job. Our viewers expect answers. You've been open about your struggles before, so why is this suddenly off limits?" Kelly's grip tightened on the arms of her chair. When she spoke, her voice sliced through the tension with deliberate precision. "There's a difference between choosing to share something because it might help others and being cornered into revealing things I'm not ready to discuss. I thought you'd understand that distinction." The camera operators kept rolling, but the unease was spreading. Off to the side, crew members shifted uncomfortably, some whispering into headsets as the control room scrambled for direction. Craig, undeterred, pressed once more. "Look, I respect your right to privacy, but you also have to admit, when you put yourself out there as a public figure, especially as a talk show host who discusses personal topics with guests, people are naturally curious about your own life." Kelly's eyes narrowed. Her voice dropped to a calm, measured tone, a warning cloaked in composure. "So because I create a safe space for my guests, that means I've forfeited my own right to boundaries." "That's an interesting perspective, Craig," Craig faltered. "That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying you can't expect people not to be interested in your personal life when your brand is built on being relatable and authentic." Kelly leaned forward, her conviction rising with every word. "My brand," she said firmly, "is built on being genuine when I choose to share. It's built on respect and real connection. It's not built on handing out pieces of my private life just because people want to be entertained by them." The tension was suffocating now. Off camera, a producer's urgent whisper crackled through a headset. Craig looked unsettled but still refused to let go. "I understand your position, Kelly," he said, his voice strained. "But I have to be honest. This kind of reaction to simple questions is only going to make people wonder what you're trying to hide." The words landed like a dare. Kelly's face flushed, her eyes blazing with restrained fury. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but charged with anger she could no longer mask. "What I'm trying to hide?" she repeated, incredulous. "Craig, what I'm trying to do is maintain some semblance of normalcy for my children and myself. What I'm trying to do is have relationships that aren't scrutinized and dissected by strangers. What I'm trying to do is be a human being who happens to be famous, not a famous person who's forgotten how to be human. Craig shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the weight of her words settling over the set. For the first time, he seemed to realize he had gone too far. Craig leaned forward, his voice softer now. "Kelly, I didn't mean to suggest—" "No, let me finish." Kelly cut in, her voice rising for the first time. She drew a sharp breath, then pressed on. "You want to know what I'm hiding? I'm hiding the fact that sometimes I cry in my car after interviews like this, because I feel like I can't win. If I share too much, I'm accused of oversharing for attention. If I protect my privacy, I'm accused of being secretive or difficult. I'm hiding the fact that my kids sometimes ask why strangers on the internet think they have a right to comment on every detail of our lives." The rawness in her voice silenced the room. Crew members shifted uncomfortably, some averting their eyes as if intruding on something too personal. Craig's expression softened, his defensiveness replaced with concern. But the damage was already visible. Kelly pressed on, her words gathering force. "I'm hiding the fact that I sometimes wonder if the price of this career is worth it. When I have to justify my basic human need for privacy to people who should know better. You have a family, Craig. Would you want every detail of your relationships analyzed and judged by millions?" Craig opened his mouth, but Kelly wasn't done. "And you know what else I'm hiding?" Her voice trembled now, equal parts fury and pain. "How disappointed I am in this moment. I've respected you as a journalist, as a person. I thought you knew the difference between real journalism and gossip mongering. I thought you knew me well enough to recognize when you were crossing a line." The studio was silent, but for the faint hum of cameras and the muffled chatter of the newsroom beyond. Craig looked rattled, his earlier confidence drained. "Kelly, I think maybe I misunderstood." "No, Craig, you understood perfectly," she replied, her tone suddenly cold and precise. "You just chose to prioritize what you thought would make good television over basic human decency. You chose to push past someone's boundaries for the sake of a moment. Well?" She turned briefly toward the camera before locking eyes with him again. "Congratulations, you got your moment. People will be talking about this." Craig's face went pale. He fumbled for words. "Kelly, I never intended—" "Your intentions don't matter as much as your actions," Kelly said firmly. "And your actions today showed me that you're willing to make a guest uncomfortable for content. That's not the journalist I thought you were, and it's not the person I thought you were." Her words landed like blows. Craig slumped back, visibly shaken, realizing this fallout was unfolding live in front of millions. Kelly pushed back her chair and stood. "I think this interview is over." The studio froze. A beloved entertainer on one of the biggest morning shows in America was seconds away from walking off set. Craig's voice cracked as he tried to recover. "Kelly, please, let's just take a breath here. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't you sit back down and we can—" "Start over?" Kelly looked down at him with quiet resolve. "Start over? You don't just reset conversations like a computer, Craig. You can't unsay things. You can't undo the way you made me feel. That's not how respect works." Craig grew desperate. "Look, maybe I pushed too hard, but that's journalism. Sometimes you have to ask the tough questions to get to the truth." Kelly let out a short, bitter laugh. "The truth? What truth were you chasing, Craig? Whether or not I'm dating someone? How would that help your viewers? Or were you just hoping I'd give you something juicy for ratings?" Several crew members had stopped moving altogether, transfixed, off camera. A producer's urgent whisper cut through headsets, scrambling for direction. Craig shook his head, flustered. "That's not fair. Now you're making this about ratings when it's about connecting with our audience. People relate to you because you've been open about your struggles," Craig insisted, his voice desperate now. "They want to know how you're doing." Kelly shook her head slowly, the sadness in her voice somehow sharper than her earlier anger. "People relate to me because I choose to share my struggles in ways that help others feel less alone. I open up when I'm ready, in my own space, on my own terms. What you tried to do here was extract something from me. Like I'm a resource to be mined for content. Her hands moved deliberately to unclip the small microphone from her jacket. Each motion was calm, final. There's a difference between authentic connection and exploitation, she continued evenly. And apparently, you don't see that difference. Craig shot to his feet, panic creeping into his tone. Kelly, come on. You're blowing this out of proportion. This is television. This is how it works. We ask, you answer, and we all move on. You're acting like I've committed some kind of crime. Kelly froze, staring at him with quiet devastation. A crime? No, but you did commit something. A betrayal of trust. I came here in good faith, trusting you'd treat me with basic respect. And instead, you decided your agenda was more important than my dignity. The words landed hard. Craig's face shifted through confusion, recognition, then something close to shame. Kelly, I didn't mean it like that. She placed the microphone carefully on her chair. I keep hearing about your intentions, but intentions without consideration for impact mean nothing. You wanted good content, but you didn't consider the cost of that content to me as a human being. Her eyes swept across the silent crew, their discomfort painted plainly on their faces. You know the saddest part? I actually like doing interviews. I love connecting, sharing, talking about my work. But moments like this, they make me want to retreat, to stop being open, to build walls instead of bridges. Please. Craig's voice had sunk to a near whisper. Don't let one interview change everything. Kelly's expression softened, but her resolve held firm. This isn't about one interview. It's about a culture that treats celebrities like they're not people, with families, with boundaries. It's about an industry that confuses fame with consent. She walked toward the edge of the set, her steps deliberate. Craig followed, his voice cracking. What do I even tell our viewers? Kelly stopped and turned back one last time. Tell them the truth. Tell them you pushed someone past their comfort zone for entertainment, and they chose self-respect over your show. Tell them that when you don't respect boundaries, people walk away. Her voice grew stronger as she went on. Tell them that being famous doesn't mean being available for consumption every minute of the day. Tell them that celebrities are human beings who deserve the same courtesy as anyone else. And tell them, she said firmly, that I hope this reminds people the faces they see on television are real people, with real families, living real struggles. We're not characters created for their amusement. And with that, Kelly Clarkson walked off the Today Show set, leaving Craig Melvin standing alone in the unforgiving studio lights, surrounded by stunned crew members and the weight of what had just unfolded. The cameras rolled on, capturing every beat of his visible distress as he tried to process what had happened and figure out how to speak to the viewers who had just watched television, history being made. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the hum of equipment and the distant noise of the newsroom beyond. Craig stood frozen for several long seconds, a man realizing the full consequences of his choices, before finally turning to the camera with the look of someone who knew nothing would ever be quite the same again. So, what do you think really pushed Kelly over the edge? Was it Craig's persistence, his dismissive attitude, or something deeper about how celebrities are treated in our culture? Subscribe for more stories like this, and let me know in the comments what you think was the real breaking point in this unforgettable confrontation.